finished half the day. We have our panel discussion. I'd like to call here Gilly Crosby and Angoury to me. And what we'd like to do is in this, each of us, well, because I've introduced myself already, but what we'd like to do now, if you can hear me, is basically the first 15 minutes to say what we, from our different perspectives, which we'll mention, I've mentioned mine already, have taken. And then really to open the conversation to you for the last 15 minutes and have a sort of discussions of points that you think that you've come, you've been left with in this discussion. Well, I'm Simone Bacchini, as you know. If you were not here earlier, I'm a social sciences curator with the Economic Linguistics Center. This is Gilly Crosby, I should say. Yes.
Wow, I'm still recovering from presentations, particularly the last one. And I'm Gilly Crosby, and I'm the Director of the Centre for Policy on Ageing, which is a very long-established charity. We were set up by the Nuffield Foundation in 1947, so we've been kicking some of these ideas around for a very, very long time. And do you want to do my 5 minutes now, or shall I? Yes, I'll keep going. Okay. First of all, and it's not often that I can sit and truly say I've really, really enjoyed all the presentations. The variety across them, I think, was quite remarkable, and also we touched on different ways of looking at issues. I think it's good to look at photography, film, fashion, and get beneath some of those stereotypes, and then to end up with Angus, bringing us all back down, maybe with a bit of dose of reality, but also I think it's quite good to have that against what I would see as a more sensitive background to some of the discussion, and looking at him. And I'm very happy to debate some of those issues from CPA's perspective with you, but perhaps another time. What I would like to say is that I think something that I've reflected on throughout the day is that I'm glad we've taken more of a life course perspective on ageing. In the past, we've divided up ageing into different sections. We've looked at employment, we've looked at health, we've looked at benefits, we've looked at finance. But I think today we have managed to do a wraparound to look at a life course perspective, which I think is right. At CPA, we're looking at more a transitional approach at the moment to do with ageing, looking at how we can see some of the cohorts that we haven't mentioned today, those new just after midlife and before retirement, where you're coming up to, and actually we'd like to ban the word retirement, but again, that's probably for another event, but where you need to do more planning. It's not because it's your fault, but we're looking at things like midlife planning going forward into the aging process and into older age. However, from a lot of our work, I think one of the areas that we haven't touched on quite so much today is about direct age discrimination. We've done a lot of work at the centre where we're looking at professions such as GPs, and I always seem to pick on them, and I don't think there are any here, so my apologies, but where it almost appears not to matter how much even power or influence you've had in your life. But if you go to a GP, they, and predominantly he, still looks at your age on the sheet of paper and will make his diagnosis, and you are less likely to be offered certain therapies as you advance in age. That is direct discrimination. It has got nothing to do with your health, with what you have perhaps gone to the GP with. And we've got loads of examples of age discrimination, so I would like us to take that far more seriously going forward. Another issue that struck me that perhaps we didn't touch on enough today is the change in demographics around the increasing diversity of our population as we go forward over the next 25, 30, 50 years. And there are going to be cultural differences between different minority populations. And I'm not going to say too much about that, but I think it is something for us to reflect on. One of the speakers touched on policies that had come through
and we used the rhetoric around choice and control. However, we missed out something very important from the policies in the late 90s and through into this decade, which is about the missing voice, choice and control. And I felt just slightly sad because we've got a lot of very, very good strategy documents, which some of us are busy unearthing and looking at again, where this came through. And the concept of self-determination, it really doesn't matter what age you are, but if you feel you've lost your self-determination, you are going to be almost invisible, and you have less power, less feeling of control over your life. And so self-determination is something that we need to take account of, and we will see that in some of the policies coming forward, but which are being attacked at the moment, and I do think we need to be careful. And I regret that in a way we've ended up with this last presentation, not because lots of us are very, very happy to debate some of what has just been said. And we haven't got it. It's not perfect. A lot of the benefits aren't, and a lot of us know that. However, at the moment, the overall impression is about pitching one generation against another. And I do think we have to be very careful, because as much as some of what was said by the last speaker, I'm absolutely sure that it wasn't supposed to be about pitching one generation against another. Unfortunately, that is what is beginning to happen, and we are scapegoating again, and I think we have to be extremely careful. So yes, by all means, present economics which will show whatever you want to show, but be very, very careful about how you couch this. It's happened before. It's not just happened about older generations. We've seen dreadful scapegoating in our past, and I think we need to be very careful about that, particularly with a more individualised society as we've got now. And I hope we will be seeing some return to a more communal stance about maybe housing, maybe this, taking into consideration the capabilities of people as we all grow old, and it is us and not them. And I mean, I've been saying that for the past 15, 20 years, but we still need to keep saying it. It isn't just looking at older generations, it is us, it is me as I grow older. I haven't paid off my mortgage. Maybe I should have done. But yes, I agree, it's not my fault. I went into this, I did that. We've all got different lives, lots of us messy lives. But we have a lot to give. We have a lot to give even at the end of life. Even, you can do all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be couched as volunteering. You don't have to be a grandparent. But I believe everybody still has something to give. Therefore, I would urge us to be careful in this time of austerity with massive cutbacks, local authorities feeling under siege. We need to be very careful that we make it an inclusive discussion. And I think today has done a lot to move forward, and I feel proud to be part of the day. So thank you.
Over to you, Jo.
Thank you very much. My name is Angoury. I'm an associate professor at the University of Warwick, and I'm a sociolinguist. I am interested in the influence of social factors on language use. Practically, I'm interested on the interface around language, culture, and identity. And most of my research is around workplace, is in workplace and healthcare settings. And the link with today's event is a recent project on age in the workplace, which touches upon some of the issues you raised. Before using my 5 minutes to reflect on all the issues that have been very nicely discussed today, which is obviously an impossible task, I would also like to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here today. And also I'm sharing exactly the same feelings. I've learned a lot. As I'm only going to touch upon 4 points, and I started making some notes which in the beginning were very nice and coherent, ended up being totally incoherent, so probably it would make very little sense, but I feel because of my disciplinary bias, I need to start by actually saying one of the things that I think we saw very clearly today is the power of discourse and the power of ideologies. I think we saw that both in relation to government discourses, in different presentations, in terms of policy documents, in terms of media discourses. The implications of policy discourses affect our lives directly, and therefore what is written becomes something that affects all of us. And similarly, media discourses affect very much the way we see ourselves, the way we are seen, the way identities and roles are being projected upon us, and the way we project identities on other people. Language and language use is never neutral, and I think a number of presenters have very nicely and convincingly shown the importance of labels and the labels we use and the consequences that they have on people's lives. The second point that I would like to raise is the complexity of identity and identities. The stance I take, which very nicely follows from what you said, Julie, is that age is a multi-layered concept, and there are dangers around social categorization. We never exist in a vacuum. Old and young categories are limited and limiting. We all can fall into both, depending on what it is we do, who it is that we are with, what is our role, what is the context within which we operate, and so on and so forth. So again, related to what I said a minute ago, language is never neutral, and by actually foregrounding a label such as old or young, we are representing very narrowly a whole set of identities that people bring when they communicate, when we interact in different contexts. So obviously, in order to understand more the complexity around these sort of things, I think we need to also have a magnifying glass and to look closer into the individual. Of course, we heard about the personal and the policy and whether they should or shouldn't be separated, but we should never lose, in my view, sight of what it means on the individual level, because again of what I said about otherwise creating categories and putting an awful large number of people into these sort of boxes that end up meaning very little if we don't see what it actually means for different people in different contexts. The third point that I feel was very nicely discussed and raised was the importance of socio-political issues around age and aging. And the field I come from has spent a lot of time and effort on seeing how different groups, defined in different ways, often on the basis of chronological age and so on, use language or what happens when they interact. But I think we need much more work to understand the kind of issues that the closing debate has actually shown, and which very much affect the way we understand age and aging in different contexts, which is the workplace, but also in everyday life. And to close my 5 minutes, which I know that I've taken already more, I would say that it has been great to actually see so many colleagues from many disciplinary backgrounds, and also to share with a number of representatives from different groups, societies, the public, and so on. And I feel, because of the complexity and the significance of the issue, we need much more of multidisciplinary research, and to join forces between academic and non-academic colleagues, and also events such as today's, in order to actually discuss and disseminate what we think are the crucial questions that we need to raise and address in order to understand aging and the importance around it, without creating narrow categories such as old or young, but to actually try and get to the core of the issues that obviously have direct implications from all our lives. Thank you very much, and I'm passing it back to you.
Well, I agree with what's been said by my two colleagues. I'm very happy, I mean, the point has been made already, that aging has been looked at as a life course issue. And in fact, it was, I think, something that Lynn Siegel mentioned. You know, we are aging all the time. And in fact, if somebody asked me, where do I go to study aging? I would say, well, start by going to a maternity ward. Because we begin aging the moment we're born. It's just how we frame phases of life. In a number of disciplines, there are what we call periodizations, where apparently there's boundaries which are artificially imposed for some very good reasons many times, but we actually impede rather than help the discussion. Again, sorry for putting you in a minority, Gilly, here, but I'm a linguist too. So for me, language, the importance of language is always stunning, and something that was a thread through all the talks, from the more theoretical to the very practical figure-based ones like Angus's talk, is the importance of representation. Reality is about facts, but there is also a reality that we create and recreate through representation, and that's done mainly, not exclusively, but mainly through language. So I think one of the reasons why I think this has been, perhaps I shouldn't say because I've helped organize this, but a very successful event, I think, is because it's helped us to look at one issue from a variety of perspective. I very much agree with, I forgot who spoke about this, but the idea of resourceful aging, which is, I think, an essential concept that we should all be aware of. When I first met Debbie Price, and she asked me why did I become interested in aging, I said something that then she said, well, happens with many people, is, well, I was raised by my grandparents, so I am the product, the visible product of what aging individuals can contribute, or you can say that was a fault, you know, can impute my grandparents, but to society, I wouldn't have lived, literally, if it wasn't for my grandparents who supported me when my mum became a single mother and, you know, kept me going. One thing, though, that I think is very also important when we're talking about language, and I thought of, is that, and I don't know if the lady who made the point, it was a very, the question after the very first talk, is that it is true that, you know, through language, we often present age and aging as a problem, and that's something that struck me from the very, many years ago. I thought, hang on, we're all living longer, and they say that this is, you know, a good thing, and then immediately after, they say that this is a problem, so why, maybe you should commit suicide very early on, but it's something very strange. But also, equally, I don't think that we have to be careful, and I'd like to know what you think, and my colleagues think as well later. I don't think it's healthy to substitute one set of metaphors and one set of assumptions for another. So, for instance, it's undeniable that, well, life and aging as a phase of life also present some special challenges. So I think that, and this is in the last talk that was very, very clearly exemplified. So I think that, again, a very rosy language, picture of aging through language could equally be a disservice, because it would end up hiding what some of the, a bit like, you know, the idea of the wealthy or the rich pensioners, or in other areas, you know, the pink pound, for instance, something like which depicts a reality which is actually much more complex. So again, I think that something that we all can do is really to voice all the insights that we've received from our different perspectives, to contribute to policies, to understanding, and to eliminate, well, not eliminate, but certainly reduce the potential for intergenerational conflict, which is always there. And that's my 5 minutes. So what we thought we would do is, for the remaining 15, is just to, I know that many people would wanted to say something, is to ask you, rather than asking us questions, but if you have any comments or reflections that you would like to voice, we'd be very glad to give the floor to you, and we'll give precedence to those who have not said anything to begin with. So there's a lady there. Yes, it's Sophie.
Just one comment. I'm 70 years of age, and I've sat in many, many lectures from about the age of 15. And it seems to me that we're talking completely different to how old we are. You could be talking to teenagers, people in their 20s, 30s, a mixture lecture, and I think it's a mistake to, because I hate when I'm put in a box. I hate it being a teenager being put in a box. And I feel we can all contribute, however old we are. Even I volunteer in a nursery school, and they can't wait to go to work at 4. And I feel that this is not, quote, for old people, aging people, people about to be old. I think this is human nature. This is all of us. I think we don't need to separate it. I feel I could be in a group. I went back to university at 40, and I felt at home with the younger people. I feel at home with, quote, the older people, which I am now put in a box. Now I'm 70. I think it's a mistake. I think that we all need to just be ourselves and to contribute to society, however old we are. And as far as separating and not having this and not having that, most of us can refuse the heating £300 a year if we live in Spain in the winter. What's to stop us doing that? Why do we have to have it all organised for us? Most of us that have children have helped them through university or education or working, or when they come back, when they lose their jobs, to live at home again. We do all of this. This is just human kindness. And I feel that we keep talking about government policy. We can change ourselves. We're the only people in the world that we can change. We can talk to the blue in the face to change the government policies and why they keep changing education every year to make it worse for the next people. I feel that we just need to be ourselves. Doesn't matter how old we are, and just be kind and contribute and keep doing that. I hope I will till I die.
Thank you very much. And there was a gentleman at the very back. By the way, I agree with a lot of what you've just said, although obviously, as was made clear, government is in a position to affect our lives in a way that, so it's true to say that I think, we all can contribute, but there is something that definitely, a question of a power imbalance, which is to further one's agenda, which is in government, held by the government, which, and maybe what we can do is through changing discourse to help in voting behavior, for instance, that you were mentioning earlier, then to affect these changes of policies that come. But yes, definitely we can contribute.
This is in fact a comment about language, but a particular kind of language. Throughout the day, people have used numbers and given forecasts about the future. They've extrapolated on what's happening now and saying in 40 years it will be like this. But they've said nothing beyond that. And this worries me because by profession I'm a physicist. I specialise in designing and testing measuring systems and instruments. And I know that measurement is very, very difficult indeed, even when you're measuring apparently simple things like voltages or masses or speeds. And I know that when I make a measurement, I don't just give a number, I have to take a confidence interval, a probability of this number being true, some risk associated with that. In none of the numbers I've heard presented today have I heard such a kind of statement. And this goes to the politics of numbers, because the speed of light in the vacuum is not a political issue. We know what it is. Every physicist agrees. But we've had speakers that have used numbers and extrapolated to the future in a very, very political way here today. Now, one thing I know as a physicist is the work of the Danish physicist Niels Bohr. He made a very, very important statement, which all of us as physicists know. He said, prediction is very difficult, especially when it concerns the future. And I would like the speakers here today who've raised political issues involving numbers and extrapolation to the future to recognise that they may well be wrong, to revisit their numbers, to revisit their mathematical models, and explain more clearly than they have done here today what underlies, what politics, what view of the world underlies their presentation of their numerical data. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
Jill wanted to
So,
say
I just would like to come back on what you're saying. I think that's a point well made. At least it'll keep some of us like a CPA in business for a long time, because we have, one of the things we do get concerned about is the misuse of statistics, which is why I know one of the speakers made a clear point about good independent evidence, which is why in fact we were set up all those years ago. I think the debate around demographics and population change at the moment is running in parallel to the debate around climate change, and it does seem to me to have remarkable similarities, where you can listen to the Today programme and tear your hair out when you hear somebody who's very definitely politically biased in what they're saying. We had a good example of that recently, which I won't say. But I think, you know, and I'm very well aware that we are getting people, I would say today not, but I would, wouldn't I, because I was involved in the planning of it. But I'm not sure that people are politically using their figures, and we all use evidence to support what we're saying. And I think it is a wise statement you make, that we do need to go back and to test some of what we are saying with the statistics to back it up. And we haven't got a lot of the figures going forward beyond about 50 years at the moment. But there is a lot around population changing to suggest that we're coming to a more of a stabilising, which I think is interesting, because that's not what a lot of people have been predicting. We aren't going up and up and up. We are going like that. So maybe things will change.
Can I say something on that? Just one word to actually say that I also very much agree with this note of caution, and the way we understand social issues and the reality around us. Obviously, we all need to go back, whether we come from a research or academic background, because we also have our disciplinary biases, the way we have been socialized in the different traditions, methodological or other. So in a sense, there are different levels of bias, which is, of course, political, the subjective, and so on, which we all need to be aware, at least to be aware of. And that's why the importance of actually coming together and debating the way we actually interpret what we see, and the way we interpret whatever we consider as data, which then inform policies, which would then have direct influence on people's lives, is paramount. And I think there is still a lot of silos. We spend a lot of time talking within our little families and our little groups, and to people wherever we come from. It doesn't matter which is our background. We spend a lot of time within this sort of certain groups of people sharing the same views. And I think this is very dangerous, because we can very easily lose track of this sort of counter discourse of actually someone say, well, hang on a second. Have you considered this? And it's not always about bad intentions. It's also about having this sort of holistic understanding of very complex issues. And that's why I think we need, that's what I was trying to actually say there, we need more events like today, which actually would create a space for that to happen.
And I don't know what you think about what I'm about to say. Well, it's sort of relates to what you were saying earlier and what the gentleman said. Again, it's about the power of discourse. Because, for instance, when we in discourse about welfare, about age, and so on and so forth, for instance, whenever there is an abundance of statistics, of numbers, that has the effect of lending a certain credibility. And also, it is sometimes, it's very often, I would argue, it's a way of obscuring the matter by presenting an idea of factuality, which perhaps, if one digs a bit deeper, I'm not saying that it's not there completely, but things are a bit more complex. So again, to me, that's to do with language. But there was a lady at the back wanted to say something.
This is sort of a backhanded compliment and criticism. I'm disappointed that we barely have half filled this auditorium. I'm disappointed. It would have been great, because I think it's been a fantastic day. I don't claim to be Mrs. Exeter, but I have come up from Exeter. And I work for Age UK Devon, and I also paint portraits of older people. So I'm very interested in what's said. I know that some of my colleagues would have been interested. I think there are lots of people working in this field that would have been interested. But also, we could have had some of the media that we are talking about here. So in a sense, I'm asking, who did you invite? Have lots of people you
Okay.
know, I just wish that more people could have shared this because I think it's been great.
Thank you very much. If I can answer to that. Well, first of all, it's very difficult. Well, I'll start with your last point. When it comes to the media, it's very difficult to have the media when for an event that is not perceived as something that can create headlines straight away. So that's one issue. Now, I agree with you, and I'm happy that we could have had more people. But can I say something? Well, some people who booked were not able to arrive. But I'll tell you a bit about the experience of us marketing for this event. First of all, we started, and there's a series of, I mean, I don't want to kind of like so blow my own trumpet, but yeah, there are other events that are planned, and when this sort of news about this event went out, bookings came in at a very quick rate. Robert, you can confirm that. And something that perhaps stupidly surprised, well, certainly me, I thought, oh, well, it will be the usual, I mean, nothing against academics, of course, but, you know, academics who come and are used to go into these kind of debates. But, I mean, although we don't have an analysis of the demographics of the background of all of you speakers, but obviously it was obvious that there was a certain demographics and background. They found this very interesting and came. So, yes, I agree with you, and I hope that we can continue with events such as this, even larger ones, to get more people, to finally get some voices heard. With the media, the problem is always, I think, a question of what the media thinks is going to attract readership or you. No, yes, but I think that, I mean, well, we have, I don't know, Colleen, you want to say?
But you did send press releases out to the media, correct?
Yes, yeah. So it's a bit, I don't know, I mean, Colleen, Dr. Cotter has also like worked in a newsroom, so in the past. So what determines the agenda of a news outlet and then how they write is a bit, but then you're right, one could be working in the media and then write some, but that's partly also to do with you know, it's a very, very fast environment when what makes the days when they write to very tight deadlines. So, but definitely there is a need for more exposure to this. Yes.
We also say that we did have video to the speakers.
Yes.
That will be available.
Oh, by the way, this is a question also that somebody asked, and we're going to have to conclude in 2 minutes. But is that the event today has been filmed and audio taped, so it will become available at some point as a podcast, and certainly we aim to put it on the library's YouTube channel. To know when this happens, you can email us if you still have my email details, and also check the social welfare portal, which is social welfare at the British Library. You can Google it. You have leaflets about it in your delegate packs. We'll put an announcement on that when it becomes available, and then, of course, you're welcome to share it and to spread the word. But our time has come to a conclusion. I'd like to thank Joe and Gilly, the panelists, all of those who have participated, the speakers, for very, very kindly agreeing to sharing their time with us. All the technical staff, the volunteers, and of course you, the audience, for coming. Thank you very much.
Yeah.